The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to TEA's Applications webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We will begin shortly. Due to the amount of information that will be shared in this webinar, questions will not be answered during this time. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please submit them using the question feature on the webinar toolbar. Questions submitted will be answered in a follow-up FAQ. For your information, this webinar is being recorded. A recording will be posted to TEA's Program Provider Resources page along with an FAQ document. This webinar is presented by TEA's Division of Educator Data and Preparation Program Management. I am Program Specialist Angela Von Hatten and will be presenting this webinar on behalf of TEA's EPP team. The EPP specialist contact information is provided here for you all. Let's now take a look at today's webinar agenda. Today, we will identify the application roles found in the Texas Administrative Code, identify the general application requirements, review the requirements for each application listed in the table, and provide application reminders. The applications we will review today are Application A, which is used to apply to add a new certification category. We will also look at the application used to add a new certification class, the intensive pre-service application, and 3 types of out-of-state applications: clinical teaching, field-based experiences, and practicums. Let's get started. When a program decides to add a new certification category or class to its certificate inventory, an application approved by the TEA is required first. The application requirements, just like program requirements, are found in the Texas Administrative Code. The application requirement to add a new certification category or class is found in 19 TAC 228.10D. The application requirement for intensive pre-service can be found in 19 TAC 228.20E and F, and is considered a program amendment. The out-of-state application reminders can be found in 19 TAC 228.35E9. Before we continue, let's review the terms certification category and certification class. Both of these definitions, along with the additional program definitions, are found in 19 TAC 228.2. A certification category is a type of certificate within a class, such as the Core Subjects EC through 6 category within the teacher class. A certification class is a certificate that has defined characteristics or requirements and may contain one or more certification categories, such as the teacher class, the principal class, the superintendent class, etc. Now that we've defined certification category and certification class, let's continue. We will now review some of the general application requirements. There are a couple of application requirements that are applicable across all application types. To be eligible to apply to add a new certification class or category, the program must have an accreditation rating of accredited. An accredited status is not required for out-of-state applications or the intensive pre-service application, since intensive pre-service is a program amendment. If the program submits an application but is not rated accredited, the application may stay on file with TEA with a pending status until the program obtains the required status. Please note that any legislative changes to the Texas Administrative Code or the Texas Education Code that occur while the application is pending will need to be addressed before the start of the application review. Another general application requirement is the application fee. An application fee is required for all applications except for intensive pre-service. If a program submits an application fee but is not eligible to apply, the fee may stay on account with TEA until the program regains eligibility, or the program may request a refund. Along with the application fee, a fee remittance form is also required to be submitted to TEA. The fee form is found in the application materials, and the fee requirement is found in 19 TAC 229.9. It is important to note that the application fee must be received before the application can be reviewed. Also, a refund will not be available for denied applications. Programs are required to complete the application information table that is found within each application. This document provides important information to TEA staff when conducting an application review. Also, 2 TEA program specialists will review each application. Applications will be given 2 reviews. After the initial review, the assigned program specialist will contact the application's primary contact regarding updates or corrections necessary for the application to be approved. If the application is not acceptable after the second review, the application will be denied. Applications that do not meet all requirements will not be approved. Now that we've gone through the general application requirements, let's see an example of the application information table. The application information table is located at the beginning of each application. It is important that this table is filled out with the most current information, since this is referred to throughout the review process. If there are any changes to the information after the application is submitted, you can notify your assigned program specialist. Now that we've had a chance to look at the table, let's take a look at the fee remittance form. This is the fee remittance form that will be submitted with the application fee, if applicable. It has a similar format to the application information sheet. The form can be found at the end of each application. if the application requires a fee. It is important to submit this form with the application fee so TEA's accounting department knows who to direct the payment to. If the fee remittance form is not submitted with the application payment, it can delay the application review process. So far, we've identified the application rules found in TAC and some general application requirements. We will now review 4 types of Educator Preparation Program applications. Application A, which is used to apply to add a new certification category, the application used to add a new certification class, the intensive pre-service application, and 3 types of out-of-state applications: clinical teaching, field-based experiences, and practicums. Let's start by reviewing Application A. The purpose of Application A is to apply for a new certification category, which is a category within a certification class, such as the Science 7 through 12 Teacher Certification category in the Teacher Certification class. Per 19 TAC 229.9, there is a $500 fee required for this application. The review timeline for this application is at least 8 weeks from the time the application materials and application fee are received at TEA. This allows time for 2 program specialists to conduct a thorough review. Once the initial review is complete, the assigned program specialist will contact the program to discuss the application review findings. This is applicable for all application reviews. The program must be rated accredited to be eligible to apply to add a new certification category. Let's now take a look at the requirements found in Application A. Let's take a moment to review the information on this slide. There are 6 parts to Application A. We will get into more detail of each part of the application in the upcoming slides, but wanted to provide an overview of it here. Part 1, Curriculum Information. Part 2, Curriculum Alignment Charts. And Part 3, the Scope and Sequence document, are curriculum-focused parts of the application. Part 4, Field-based experiences. Part 5, Training requirements. And Part 6, Qualified instructors, are more program process focused. There are 5 appendices in this application, including a Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board letter of approval. A letter of approval is required to be submitted to TEA along with the application every time a public university-based program applies to add a new certification category. This letter can take up to 30 days to be approved, so it is important to apply for approval with the THECB before the program submits the application to TEA. The link to the new certificate request website can be found under Appendix A on this slide. This presentation will be posted to TEA's Program Provider Resources page, where programs can access the link. You may also visit the THECB website for the request. Please note that Appendix A is only required for public university-based programs. In Appendix B, programs will submit the assessment instruments and scoring rubrics for each course identified in the course curriculum tables in Part 1. Appendix C requires the program to submit the related alignment charts for the certification category sought. Appendix D will include the program's formal observation instrument, and Appendix E will include the program's online accreditation letter, if coursework is provided online. In addition to the appendices and the application itself, the program is required to submit a letter to add a certificate signed by the program's legal authority. The letter template will be provided by TEA in the application materials. If you have not applied for a new certification category in a while, you'll notice that parts of the application have been revised. In the past, TEA requested more detailed curriculum information than what is requested in Application A. On the next slide, we will discuss what is now required in the curriculum section. Part 1 of Application A is where programs will identify one performance-based assessment, activity, or task per course that is part of the required coursework. Here is an example of the course curriculum table. Programs will complete one table per course for the required coursework provided by the program. Let's take a moment to look over the information on this slide. If you attended the Performance-Based Assessment and Rubrics webinar, the following information might sound familiar. If you would like to view the Performance-Based Assessment and Rubrics webinar, you can find it on the TEA Program Provider Resources page. Please note that when the term performance-based assessment is used, this is also applicable to performance-based activities or tasks. This is where programs can write a course description to provide an overview of the course. Under the Curriculum Standards column, programs will list specific standards that the performance-based assessment is based on. Programs are only required to list the standards that are evident in the performance-based assessment, not the standards that will be taught in the entire course. Here, programs will list the specific test framework competencies that the performance-based assessment is based on. Here, programs will provide a detailed description of the performance-based assessment. This is where TEA will provide the score for each course. So this last column is for TEA use only. On the next slide, we will look at the rubric used to score this part of the application. Please note that a passing score for each course is a 3 or a 4. Now that we've identified the requirements in Part 1, let's take a look at the rubric used to evaluate it. This rubric will be used to assess the assessment instruments and scoring rubrics submitted as part of Appendix B, along with the information in the course curriculum tables in Part 1. Let's take a moment to look it over. Here, TEA will look for alignment between the assessment to the curriculum standards and test framework competencies identified in the course curriculum tables in Part 1. TEA staff will also review the assessment to ensure it provides candidates with an opportunity to demonstrate proficiency in the educator standards and test framework competencies. Then, TEA will compare the rubric to the assessment to identify alignment between the assessment and the rubric. TEA should be able to identify defined success criteria that is aligned to the standards and test framework competencies identified in the course curriculum table. Before we move on to the next slide, I'd like to focus on a part of the rubric that has required some clarification in the past. To receive a passing score of a 3 and a 4 for the performance-based assessment, candidates must be able to demonstrate their understanding and knowledge of the standards and competencies in a school setting. For those courses that do not occur during a time where the candidate can work in a true school setting, such as field-based experiences, clinical teaching, and internships, programs can provide in-class opportunities to demonstrate their understanding and knowledge to their peers. Now that we've reviewed Part 1's rubric, let's continue. Just like Part 1, Parts 2 and 3 of Application A are curriculum-focused as well. Part 2 requires the program to submit the alignment charts related to the certification category that the program is applying for. Programs can contact their assigned program specialist for the alignment charts. There are a handful of alignment charts that will be required for all teacher certification areas. These will also be provided by the assigned program specialist. For both the alignment charts and the scope and sequence document, the program will list courses that are a part of the minimum clock hours of coursework for the certification class, which would be courses that are standards-based. For the purpose of the application, programs will only identify courses from program admission to standard certification. For university-based programs, courses taken prior to program admission are not included in the minimum clock hours of coursework. Also, courses taken outside of the program that do not include educator standards are not required to be listed in the application. Remember, the courses identified in Part 1 must also be listed on the alignment charts and in the scope and sequence document. Let's now take a look at the rubric used to evaluate the scope and sequence document. This is the rubric that TEA will use to evaluate the scope and sequence document. Let's take a moment to look it over. TEA will verify that programs are structuring their courses in a way that allows candidates to be successful in the classroom, such as providing courses that would benefit a candidate's training requirement before they step foot in the classroom. By providing coursework that allows the candidate to practice teaching before working as a teacher of record, the program is helping to set up the candidate and their future students for success. Let's now take a look at parts 4 through 6 of Application A. Parts 4 through 6 of Application A are program process focused. Here, programs will provide information about the program's requirements for field-based experiences, clinical teaching, or internships, including cooperating teacher, mentor teacher, and field supervisor information. Let's take a moment to read through the information on this slide. For parts 4 and 5, programs should provide detailed descriptions for each component. While the application is based on TAC requirements, programs should avoid copying and pasting TAC directly into the application. Programs should also avoid using abbreviations, unless they've been identified within the application. If the program is applying for multiple routes, parts 4 and 5 will be filled out for each route. Also, if courses vary for different routes, the program would identify which courses will be provided in each route applied for in Part 1. For Part 6, Qualified Instructors, The program is required to provide information for those responsible for providing coursework, training, field supervision, and administration, such as degrees held, currently certified areas, and their role in the program. If a field supervisor is not a currently certified teacher, provide their educational experience in the box shown on the slide. This box is the last column in the table, found in Part 6 of the application. Let's now take a look at the rubrics used to evaluate the rest of Application A. This rubric will be used to evaluate the formal observation instrument that is submitted as part of Appendix D. Let's take a moment to look it over. TEA will verify that the observation instrument is designed to measure candidate proficiency in the curriculum standards and test framework competencies identified in the course curriculum table in Part 1. Let's take a look at the overall rubric for Application A. This is the rubric that is used to evaluate alignment throughout Application A. Let's take a moment to look it over. Here, TEA staff will use the information submitted in all 6 parts of the application to determine the overall score. The main theme in this application, and in all program applications, is alignment. It is important to make sure that what the program submits is aligned to TAC and to the standards and competencies identified in the application. Now that we've completed a review of Application A, the next application we will review is the application to add a new certification class. A certification class is a certificate that has defined characteristics or requirements and may contain one or more certification categories, such as the teacher class. There is a $1,000 fee for this application. Remember, the fee remittance form is required to be submitted with the application fee. Please note that certification class applications must be approved by the SBEC. The timeline for the application review is approximately 6 months due to the SBEC approval requirement. Also, programs are required to have an accredited status to apply to add a new certification class. Certification classes include Educational Diagnostician, Principal, Reading Specialist, School Counselor, School Librarian, Superintendent, and Teacher. Let's take a look at the application requirements. Each certification class application includes components 1 through 8 as shown here. Programs are required to provide information for all 8 components. These components should look familiar since they are the components that guide the continuing approval program reviews, which are conducted every 5 years. Each application also comes with a pre-submission checklist to help programs keep track of what is required for the application. Let's take a moment to look over the checklist. This list requires the program to make sure that the correct contact information is submitted, the program assurances are signed by the program's legal authority, and that the executive summary, application, and proposal are in the correct format. The checklist reminds the program that the appendices should contain the requested information and to make sure the application fee is paid. Now that we've identified what is required in this application, let's go over a few application tips. Just like application A, programs should provide detailed descriptions for each component. While the application is based on TAC requirements, programs should avoid copying and pasting TAC directly into the application. Programs should explain how they are addressing each TAC requirement in their own words. Programs should also avoid using abbreviations, unless they've been identified within the application. When the program is ready to submit the application, make sure the appendix items are clearly identified. Also, it is important to be mindful of the difference in requirements for internships and practicums. This would be the same for the cooperating teacher and mentor-teacher qualifications. We've provided an example of part of the rubric for the superintendent class application. Here, you can see what TEA looks for when reviewing this type of application. This format is used for all 8 components that are evaluated for this application. Let's now take a look at the intensive pre-service application. The purpose of this application is to apply to add the intensive pre-service route. Since intensive pre-service is a program amendment, the review timeline and accredited status differ from other application requirements. There is no fee required for this application. If a program has an accredited status, they are required to submit the IPS application at least 60 days before implementation. For programs with an accredited warned or accredited probation status, they are required to submit the IPS application at least 120 days before implementation. Though this is a program amendment, TAC requires approval or denial of the application. The intensive pre-service option is a 4-week specialized assignment provided by the program. It provides candidates with an opportunity to gain classroom experience before working as a teacher of record. Programs must be approved by TEA before candidates can participate in the IPS assignment. An IPS assignment would occur after a candidate has been admitted to the program and before they are eligible for a probationary or intern certificate. As stated earlier, the IPS assignment is considered a program amendment and would follow the requirements found in 19 TAC 228.2 E and F. Let's now take a look at the IPS application requirements. There are 3 parts to the IPS application. Part 1 requires the program to identify program requirements for candidates. Part 2 requires the program to identify program requirements for the candidate coach. And Part 3 requires the program to submit information regarding certification requirements. There are 3 appendices for this application. The program is required to submit candidate coach information, an IPS calendar that details when and how the IPS requirements will be met, and a candidate proficiency rubric when applying for the intensive pre-service. Please note that a program amendment notification letter for the IPS assignment is required to be submitted along with the IPS application. The program will provide a detailed description of the amendment and the rationale for the proposed change in the notification letter. TAC requires that the program amendment notification letter is on EPP letterhead and signed by the program's legal authority. If you would like to apply for the IPS option, please contact your assigned program specialist for the application. Let's now take a look at the IPS application rubric. This is the rubric that will be used to evaluate the IPS application. Let's take a moment to look it over. There are 3 criteria that will be evaluated during this process. TEA will look for consistent, rigorous, and relevant instructional feedback, a standards-based rubric, and alignment to TAC in all application components. Since this option occurs in a short time frame, it is important to make sure that candidates are provided with specific feedback in a timely manner that allows candidates to be successful educators. As stated before, if your program is interested in applying for this option, please contact your assigned program specialist. Let's now take a look at the last set of applications for this webinar, the out-of-state applications. The purpose of this application is to apply for approval of an out-of-state placement. A $500 application fee is required, along with the fee remittance form. The application review timeline is 6 to 8 weeks. Programs are not required to hold an accredited status for this application. The out-of-state applications include applying for clinical teaching placements, field-based experience placements, and practicum placements outside of Texas. You might notice that internship is not listed here. That is because internships cannot occur out of state due to the in-state intern and probationary certification rules. Please note that a candidate cannot start in the out-of-state placement until the placement has been approved by TEA. This means that programs will need to submit the application with enough time for revisions, if needed, and for the application to be approved. If your program has a candidate that completes one of the training requirements out of state, the program is still responsible for ensuring the candidate completes all other program requirements. Programs are also responsible for providing ongoing support to the candidate throughout their time enrolled in the program, even if they are in an out-of-state placement. Let's now take a look at the out-of-state placement application components. A program may file an application with TEA for approval, subject to a review of a public or private school for a candidate's placement located within any state or territory of the United States as a site for practicums, clinical teaching, or field-based experiences. Let's take a moment to review the application information presented on this slide. All out-of-state applications require the program to provide general candidate information, placement information, the reason for the out-of-state placement, a standards crosswalk comparison, and training information. Depending on the type of out-of-state application, the program would provide either a detailed clinical teaching plan that includes the out-of-state cooperating teacher and field supervisor qualifications, a field-based experience plan that includes how the program will determine that the out-of-state field-based experiences are equivalent to an in-state FBE experience, or a practicum plan that includes out-of-state site supervisor and field supervisor qualifications. Each out-of-state application requires the program to identify a clear correlation for each of the Texas educator standards related to the certification category or class sought to the out-of-state placements educator standards. It is important for the program to list each standard in its entirety. Please see the example that is provided here. We will now take a look at one part of an out-of-state application rubric. This rubric is used to evaluate an out-of-state practicum application. Let's take a moment to look it over. Each out-of-state rubric has an overall scoring table as shown here. Each out-of-state application rubric will evaluate each section of the application that follows the format of the site supervisor rubric, which is the second rubric table shown here. As you can see, to receive a 1, which is required for approval of an out-of-state application, programs are required to complete all sections and follow the instructions provided in the application. TEA staff will review each section of the application thoroughly. Incomplete information within the application may result in denial of the application. Let's now identify some tips for out-of-state applications. Let's take a moment to read through the information on this slide. When filling out an out-of-state application, it is important to note TEA cannot accept applications or application fees from candidates. If your program requires the candidate to pay for the application, the program can work with the candidate to receive payment internally and then submit the application fee along with the fee remittance form to TEA. The standards crosswalk comparison can be looked at as a bridging of the Texas standards to the out-of-state placement standards. For each Texas standard, the program should identify the related standard from the out-of-state placement. Programs should list the standard in its entirety to ensure TEA can verify the correlation between the standards. Please note that the bridging between the correlation of standards should include the indicator level within each standard as shown on the previous slide for the Commissioner's Texas Teacher Standard. The example of the standard provided was 19 TAC 149.1001 B1 capital A Romanet 1. If there are no comparable standards, the application will not be approved. It is important to provide detailed descriptions for each section. Remember, insufficient information in any area of the application may delay approval. Reviewing the TAC rules found in the application can help provide additional information about the rule. This can help identify what the rule is requiring the program to do or what specific information to provide in the application. The out-of-state placement must be approved before the candidate starts in the placement. This means that programs will need to submit the application with enough time for revisions, if needed, and for the application to be approved. If a candidate starts working in the out-of-state placement prior to TEA approval, any time spent in the placement will not count towards the training requirement. It is important to submit the application with enough time for TEA staff to review it. Now that we've reviewed the 4 types of applications, let's see what's next on our webinar agenda. We've reviewed the application rules found in TAC, general application requirements, and 4 types of applications. Application A, the application used to add a new certification class, the IPS application, and out-of-state applications. Before we conclude this webinar, Let's review some application reminders. TEA must receive the application fee and the complete application before the application review can occur. Don't forget, the fee remittance form is also required to be submitted with the application fee. 2 program specialists will review each application. Please submit the application with enough time for TEA staff to review it. When the program is completing an application, it is important to review the TAC rules found in the application. This can help to identify what the rule is requiring the program to do or what specific information to provide in the application. Any insufficient information within the application may delay approval. Make sure all parts of the application are completed. Provide detailed descriptions for each section. Pretend you are filling out the application for someone who is new to the educator preparation realm. Programs should avoid copying and pasting TAC directly into the application. Reading the application in the program's own words helps to get a better understanding of the program processes. Programs should not process candidates in the application area until the application is approved. And you can contact your assigned program specialist to discuss the best way to submit the application. We have come to the end of today's webinar. Please note that there will be a short survey following this webinar. If you have a moment to fill it out, we'd appreciate your feedback. We hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Thank you for attending.